We are ready and raring to go for a Saturday night, July 11th, 2026. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to our speed report following qualifying today in Atlanta, Echo Park Speedway. And we're going to get right into it. So let's go ahead and welcome everybody to the report. What we do each week is go over the speed charts. Normally, we also talk about practice, but they don't practice at Atlanta ever since the change. And so all we have is qualifying. We're going to get into the updated odds. We're going to go over our top contenders. And then we are also going to check out, I got a couple of teams I put together for DFS and also just update the picks and also show you what our picks were earlier in the week. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. Why don't we do that? Because one of our listeners thought this would come in handy, and I agree. So there you go. Those were our top picks from Tuesday's show. Link in the description of this video. You could check out we usually do about 45 minutes to an hour every Tuesday with CJ Redoon. He is our lead auto analyst here on the network, mostly NASCAR and F1. And so we go through in depth all the key drivers that you want to keep an eye on, all the history of the track and the drivers, the odds early in the week. We give our picks and why. Also talk about some fantasy bargains you need to keep an eye on later in the week, which is now, and all that other fun stuff. So that's on Tuesdays. You can always check that out. But anyway, these are the picks we put together for this week. Okay. And usually in these super speedways, there's not a big difference. You know, a lot of times on most other tracks, you're going to have a different opinion on Tuesday to Sunday based on qualifying and practice, but not so much normally on super speedways like Atlanta. So anyway, those were the picks that we had early in the week. I'll let you know whether or not I'm deviating. Actually, I can just let you know I'm not. Those are still going to be good picks for me. I don't have anything wrong with those picks at this point in time. Okay, so let's pop up the qualifying from today. And what a surprise. The Penske brothers, Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano, are on the front row. I guess the big surprise, of course, would be Austin Dillon sitting there in fourth. Other than that, no surprises. Now, what you also might need to know regarding some key trends and historical information as far as starting position, winning starting positions, just going back over the last, what do we got? 7 next-gen races. The last 7, we have 2 pole sitters that have won, including this year. Tyler Reddick won from the pole, even though, as we talked about on Tuesday, and as you remember, if you do remember, he was involved with an early incident. Things did not look very good. He was pretty far back. He was the big wreck that he was involved in was about 37 to go. He was actually in 22nd place with 24 to go. And unfortunately, with the next gen car, that's usually a death sentence, even at super speedways. And that never used to be the case. With the old car, you could be in 22nd with 4 laps to go, and you still had a chance. So it was very unusual, but there were 2 overtime restarts, and that definitely played a part, as well as the fact that Bubba Wallace choked and opened up the bottom of the lane for Chase Briscoe to push Tyler Reddick to victory. Okay. Now, another thing. Normally, we do not receive the odds early enough because they are waiting for the O'Reilly race to end, and the O'Reilly race is going on right now. And I think it's not really a surprise, though, because like I just said, they don't really care too much about odds. The odds just don't change a whole lot after qualifying and all that. I am a little bit surprised that they waited, though. Now, the only thing I could say that they didn't wait, the only thing I could guess is, and let me know, I don't know if you guys are watching, but maybe there's no Cup drivers. Is that possible? Normally there are. So if there are no Cup drivers in the race, even Austin Hill is. So that would, even just alone, that would be good enough for them to say, well, you never know, something could happen, and so we don't want to put the odds out. I don't really know the exact reasons why they do that, but we benefited. The odds came out early, and that's why we're on early. Okay, otherwise we would have been on about 9:30. All right, so again, you got the 2 pole sitters, including this year. The other starting positions, only one other top 10. That was 7th. And then you have a 15th, an 18th, a 23rd, and a 32nd. So again, a wide variety, not a surprise. Now, Ford has been the dominant manufacturer here for 3 years, heading into this year. But then Toyota had a good race in February. Again, they got the win. So, and it was really the start of the type of year they were going to have. Daytona, Atlanta, and then they just were off and running, because Ford had been, of course, the dominant manufacturer on these super speedways. And then it was Reddick. And from there on out, it was all Toyota basically this year. And so that's the one thing we got to keep an eye on. And then the other thing is Chevy, also behind Ford, caught up a little bit as well, even though they didn't win the race, but they also caught up a little bit. So how did they fare? Well, as you can see right here, Ford once again on the front row. Chevy, really good. They had, was it 6 in the top 9? No Toyota drivers in the top 10. What does that mean? I guess we'll find out tomorrow, but I'm not going to worry about it too much, just because it's Toyota. And I will say that it does, if I'm picking a Toyota driver, I'm definitely a little bit more concerned, because not only was Eric Jones the first Toyota in 11th, as far as the 11th fastest in qualifying, but as you can see, he was the only Toyota driver in the top 19. How crazy is that? The only Toyota driver in the top 19 in qualifying. So again, we're going to find out tomorrow how impactful that is. Normally, that would be very, very impactful. Normally, it would be, oh, forget it. Toyota has no chance. But until it happens, I'm just not going to go that way. I'm just still going to lean a little bit more and say, okay, Ford drivers, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, even Chevy drivers. And so, yeah, look, Bell was my top pick this week. I still like them. I still like the value in them. So that doesn't change. If I didn't already put money on them and I had to decide whether to do that, we'll get into the odds and all that, I would. Would I do it as confidently and with more money like I would have earlier in the week? No, I wouldn't. But I would still do it enough where I would want to take advantage of the value. So there you go. That's the impression that we got. Now, as far as other drivers outside the top 10 that stick out, either positive or negatively, as you can see, here's Briscoe's the second Toyota driver, 20th. And then we got all the Toyotas. We got Wallace, Gibbs, Hamlin, 28th, Reddick, Bell, 31st and 32nd. So not a good day for Toyota. And as far as some Chevy drivers, you have the disappointing day so far for Byron, who was 26th. And that's really it. So he's the only big disappointment from the Chevys or the Fords, because most of the Fords and Chevys had a good day today. Now, let's take a look at the updated odds. So let's pop those up. Here we go. Okay, so Ryan Blaney is now the heavy favorite. I believe the next, I think 8-1, and then you have to go to 12-1. So you got a 4-point difference, which is pretty strong. I guess that's what happens when Ryan Blaney, who is considered one of the elite, if not the elite, super speedway drivers is on the pole. So that's what's going to happen. It's still a decent number. You like Ryan Blaney and you wanted to wait, which you really shouldn't have. You just, like I said, you just don't wait for qualifying. But there are some situations where you should, and we'll get into that as we go through this because we did mention that on Tuesday. Okay, let's go through these drivers. We don't really have to say much about Blaney. You know how good he is. Keep in mind, he's on a streak now of 11th or better in 9 straight races, and he hasn't won yet during that stretch. Also, how about this? He has qualified in the top 6 at Atlanta 9 of the 10 times in next gen. Now, you might say, well, that's really good, right? Fantasy-wise, yes. But to win the race, no, because of the fact that he's won once, and that was 2021. Okay, so that's not next gen. That's the year before next gen. And so all of these top 6 starting positions have not won races for Ryan Blaney, and there he is on the pole. So I really wouldn't put too much stock in it other than fantasy, which we'll get in later on. And there's Logano, his partner. That's going to be important. Logano, if you look at it, has really been a very interesting fantasy option because he's negative 107 position-wise in next gen, which is very bad, right? But he's won twice. Okay, so he has 2 wins, which is what you want. And he's led 9 or more times in 8 of the 9 next-gen races and 26 or more laps in the last 3 races. So while you're getting negative, and again, this is what happens. You start second. What's going to probably happen if he doesn't win the race, he's going to be negative again, more than likely. But I'm not going to worry about it too much because Joey's out there really looking at this as a great opportunity to win a race. And he's on the bubble and he would like to win. So and he's going to get a chance if he can avoid a wreck. And that's going to be the issue. Other than that, you can never predict those, of course, but 12-1, that's where he should be. Very good fantasy option. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the negative stuff because I think he's a decent pick this week altogether. And then you have Kyle Larson. We'll stick with the 12-1s here. Larson's 12-1. Elliott's 12-1. As you can see, his teammate, the defending champ of the race. Larson, though, we can't tell you enough about Kyle Larson and his inability to have any sort of meaningful success on the super speedway races like Atlanta, Daytona, and Talladega. He is minus 135 in positions in next gen at this track, minus 135. You thought Logano's was, Larson has wrecked 6 times, 6 in next gen. And don't forget what happened in February when he wrecked, and it was his fault. And he nearly took out SVG. Last lap of stage 2. Terrible. And you saw what happened last week, too. It's just even though he's been better lately with top 5s, last week was just another reminder that I don't know whether he's pushing it too hard, whatever it is. The longer the drought continues, I think the more tense he is and the bigger a problem this is. And now he's coming to a speedway like this. Not good. So he's only had 1 top 10 in the next gen in Atlanta. He did lead 48 laps this year, earlier in February, but it just doesn't matter because he just can't figure out a way to not screw things up at some point. Now, as I mentioned the other day, I think the one situation that would have worked perfectly for him would have been the Christopher Bell win when it was Bell, Hocevar, and Larson, and then it basically yellow flagged it on the last lap and Bell won. And if he didn't do that, that could have been a tremendous opportunity. It was a tremendous opportunity for Kyle Larson to win that race. Couldn't do it because of the caution coming out. So anyway, Kyle Larson at 12-1. No way. You're getting the same odds as one of the best super speedway drivers, drafting drivers that has ever raced in the Cup Series. And that's Joey Logano. Are you kidding me? No way should Kyle Larson be 12-1 just like Joey Logano. So, and he's got this long losing streak he's dealing with. So there just is no value on Kyle Larson. Let's just put it that way. And we've also said this for the last couple of years. And even though he's been better result-wise on these tracks, it's still the same. We're never going to, CJ and I have talked about this, we're never going to bet on Kyle Larson on one of these tracks until he wins. And we've said this for years. And so what have we now been dealing with since we've said this? How many races have we been talking about? Maybe 12 more races. So we haven't been wrong since. And we're just going to keep it going until he wins. Because he's going to win. You know, he'll find himself in a position where he'll luck out and win. But the guy just is not a very good drafter. He's not a very good super speedway racer at those tracks. Okay, moving on. His teammate, though, Chase Elliott, is. And Chase Elliott, the defending champ of the race, has never finished outside the top 20 at Atlanta in next gen, including 2 wins. He led 41 laps last year to win. It's his home track. Chase has been on a little bit of a cold spell lately, though. But solid 12-1. Absolutely. Logano, Elliott, 12-1. No problem. Larson, you're away. Okay. And then you got Cindric at 15-1. And yeah, I mean, the reason I picked Cindric the other day and I got him at 18-1 was because of the fact that if you look at it, look at this, fantasy-wise too, great option. He has led 10 or more laps in his last 6 races at Atlanta for a total of 214 laps led. That is outstanding. Now, the problem has been he hasn't been able to finish these races as much as he would like. He's only had 2 top 5s. And matter of fact, he was involved with a wreck earlier this year. So that's been kind of the thing, but there's more luck involved that way. I'm not worrying about that. I think he's one of the better fantasy options. And so, especially with all those laps, and he's going to hook up with Joey or Ryan. And that's one of the main reasons he can do that. So there you go. Okay. Keselowski, as bad as Keselowski has been for the past few months, I mean, 16-1, no value at all on Keselowski. Why would I bet on Brad Keselowski right now? He cannot do anything right at this point in time. Even last week, when it looked like he was getting out of it, he gets, good. Because remember, he's coming off that solid finish, solid result at Sonoma. And you were like, oh, okay, 15th place finish, Sonoma, maybe. And that was good compared to what he had done previously, which was 34th, 34th, 38th, 34th. And then he gets up to a good start, qualifying in practice at Chicago. So you're figuring, oh, here comes Brad Keselowski. No, disappeared. Once the green flag went up, didn't even finish in the top 20. And you want me to take Brad Keselowski right now at 16-1? That just doesn't make much sense. You got to remember, we all know how good he is at these types of tracks. That's the reason he's getting the credit at 16-1. But there's, again, like Larson, there's just no value. Next up, you have Chastain at 22-1. And Chastain, a very good fantasy driver at Atlanta, plus 68 as far as fantasy positions for Ross Chastain. He is also... he's got 117 laps to his credit here, 5 top 10s in 9 next-gen races with 2 runner-ups. Now, they did occur in his first 2 races at Atlanta, but he does have some good experience even after that. The only problem with Ross Chastain and Bubba Wallace, who we'll get to in a little bit, is for whatever reason, they have not been good in July at this track. Now, the only thing we can think about is the weather. There's a major weather difference. I mean, that's it. There's nothing else other than luck Coincidence? Usually I don't look at that as coincidence. So, you're always trying to, when you've got so many options to choose from, like at races in Atlanta, you got to nitpick certain drivers. And that's kind of what I'm going to do with Chastain and Wallace. Me personally, CJ has Wallace, as you saw before, as one of his, I think it's his top long shot pick. I'm just going to nitpick these guys and say, you know what? Until they prove they can do it in July when it's hotter, I'll pass. But again, a good option. Check out fantasy and just keep that in mind, whether you care about it or not, how Chastain and Wallace have run in July at Atlanta lately. Okay. And then we have, let's go with Bowman. Okay. Bowman, 28-1. Really like Bowman. We talked about Bowman as a good long shot the other day. He was 35-1, only down to 28-1 now. In this race last year, he was third and led 32 laps. And unlike Chastain and Wallace, he's been better in July. His last 2 July stops in Atlanta, both top fives, third and fifth. He was 23rd earlier this year, but he started 36th. This is the best ever start for Bowman in Atlanta. So that has to be a really good sign for Bowman, especially because you're still getting a big number and will be a good priced driver option in fantasy. And then you have the next driver, Suarez, which is getting tremendous value at 35-1. He was 40-1 the other day. And so like Bowman, he comes down a little bit, but not much. 6 top 10s in 9 next-gen races. 5 of those are top 5s, 2 runner-ups and a win. His average start in his last 7 races at Atlanta is 25th. This is a good sign, starting 5th. So big deal there. He's also gained 78 positions in the next gen over those 9 races. So excellent fantasy option and also a good pick with his number at 35-1. The only thing is he doesn't lead a lot of laps. And so keep that in mind. Okay. Then you have one more, and not much to say about Austin Dillon. 8-1, all you need to know. Nothing I can say that's going to, it's 80-1. You want to put a buck on him. I'm not going to talk you out of it, but I don't look at Austin Dillon as an option. He just does not have a good career here at all. Okay. Next up, the top contenders, and a lot of options here. So let's go with the top options so far as we go all the way down to Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick at 12-1. Now, we mentioned this the other day with Denny Hamlin. Basically said if he starts way back, which has been his MO here lately, then he becomes a good fantasy option. Well, he's starting way back. And I'll put my money where my mouth is. He's averaged 34th in his last 4 starts at Atlanta before today. And yet he's gained 61 positions. Of course he would. He's an excellent drafter, excellent at these tracks. The problem is, or normally, because he's good at Daytona and Talladega, for whatever reason, it has not worked out for him at Atlanta. Atlanta has just not been kind to Denny Hamlin, except in fantasy. So I think you should try to take advantage of that. And then you should also think about Tyler Reddick taking advantage of the fact that he is all the way back in 31st. So they're going to be able to gobble up positions. And we don't really have to go into Tyler Reddick. You know what the deal is. He's just been a completely different driver this year. Now, the problem I have with picking Reddick is what we've talked about the last few weeks on this report. He's just in a bad way right now. And the results just speak for themselves. So we don't have to keep going down that road. It's the case. He's just not in a good, he's just not in a good role right now. He's just not. He got up to such a hot start this year, and maybe too hot. Now you knew he was going to level off. You just didn't know how much. And now he's kind of leveled off a lot. That doesn't mean he's not going to get things going again. Just means that this is kind of the cold part of his season. And therefore, on a track like this, where anything can happen, when you're not going well, that's the thing now I would just be concerned with. Because on one hand, I'm going, wow, I get Tyler Reddick 31st. Boy, if he wins this race, I'm going to kill it in fantasy. That's an option. That's a good option. But the thing you're just going to have to keep in mind, and I would hope that you'd have a second team just in case, is if he's going bad, he could continue to go bad, and maybe something happens out there on lap 50 and he's done. And you've just wiped out your driver option there with Tyler Reddick. I definitely would not take Hamlin and Reddick, though, at 12-1 to win the race, especially Hamlin, who does not, again, like I said, have any sort of good history here during next gen. Reddick, I would definitely consider it over Hamlin and a few other drivers, like even Larson. I don't care where they're lined up. I would take Reddick over Larson without a doubt, even tomorrow. But there are other options, and he is starting way back. Okay. Then you have Briscoe at 14-1. Now, Briscoe is coming off the big win, so winning back-to-back is going to be very difficult. He was second in February, so that's a good sign, leading 27 laps, pushing Tyler Reddick to victory. But other than that, he does not have like this tremendous record. Matter of fact, his second in February was the only top 10 he has ever had at the track, but he is on a new team with Joe Gibbs. So, yeah, I just think there are other options. That's all. I think they're still asking too much for Briscoe to go back-to-back. It could happen. We've seen it happen a few times this year, but I'm not getting any value at 14-1. Then you've got Hocevar and Byron and Bell at 16-1. So with Hocevar, this is CJ's second pick, and he's a very good fantasy option. If you take a look at what Hocevar has done here in his 5 next-gen races, he's finished in the top 10 in 3 straight, 4th, 10th, and 2nd. Matter of fact, in the last 3 races at Atlanta, on the last lap, he has had an opportunity. He's been right there for a win, and he hasn't been able to pull it off, but he's been right there for the win. And so and he's gained 87 positions in next-gen in fantasy. Not a lot of laps. Okay, so there's that. Keep that in mind. But also, check this out. Before this year, his average starting position in Atlanta was 30th, 30.7. This year, he's started 15th and 14th. So he's starting better position, and the results just keep getting better. Then you have Byron, who is really a hit or miss here. But the way Byron's season has gone at this point, just don't think it's a good idea to go with him. In his last 3 races at Atlanta, his average is 30.6 with 2 wrecks. Matter of fact, if you look at it too, he's only led 8 laps in his last 5 races at Atlanta since his last win. Now, he has 2 wins at Atlanta in the next gen, but it happened 2022 and 2023. So he hasn't been that same driver here lately. And he's only started in the top 10 once in the next gen. And that was 9th position. And here he goes, once again, starting way back in 26. So in other words, because what we said the other day was, let's see what Byron does. I'll talk about it on Saturday. Maybe if he starts 5th, sort of like some of the drivers we already mentioned that have started a lot better today from years past, that should be a sign that, hey, maybe they've got even a better car or a better chance. Yeah, Byron, unfortunately, did not accomplish that. And so it's going to be a pass for me. But for Chris Bell at 16-1, starting 32nd, I'm still going to stick with Chris. I love the fact that if you take a look at fantasy, he has gained 62 positions in his last 4 at Atlanta. Hasn't led a lot of laps, so you got to keep that in mind. But he has the win in 2025 under caution, and he was wrecked by Hocevar in the overtime restart when he was in second place, and that was earlier this year. That was the one where on the very first restart, Hocevar tried to make it a three-man lane, and when he shouldn't have. Bell paid the price, and they went to a second restart, and that's when Wallace choked, moved up. Briscoe pushed Reddick to victory. So anyway, Bell has been there with a chance to win several times lately, and he does have the win under caution, and he's really been racing better lately, as we know. So I'm still feeling okay. I'm not worried too much about 32nd because matter of fact, let's see. Yeah, if you look at it, he started 32nd this year and was in second place in the last lap when he got wrecked. So next up in this group, what's the start at the top? We got Eric Jones, 50-1. Now, this is another driver who's in really good position this year in this race because Eric Jones, if you look at it, he has, where is it? There it is. Eric Jones, his best start, 11th tomorrow, is we haven't seen this start for Eric Jones since his second career start at Atlanta. You have to go all the way back to his second career start in 2018 when he started, I think it was 10th. Here he's starting 11th. It's his second best ever start at Atlanta, the best start he's ever had in Next Gen. His average start overall was 23.6. His average Next Gen start, 27.5. And yet now he's starting 11th. That should be a good sign for Eric Jones fans. And you're still getting a big price at 50-1. SVG, as I mentioned, he had a coming out party, as we know, in February when he had a really good race. He almost got taken out by Kyle Larson. Still, he had a good race, started 28th, finished 6th. Chris Buescher does not have a good history here, so it's a pass for me. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., though, good value, 50-1. If you look at Ricky, he has, where's Ricky's? 4 top 10s in his last 6 races at Atlanta for Ricky Stenhouse. So this has been a really good track for him. He hasn't led a lot of laps or anything like that. And before the crash this year, because he was involved in a wreck, he started 3rd, which was the best he's ever started here. But before the crash in February, which was his first next-gen crash, okay, his average result in the next-gen races was 9.6. So that's very solid. This is a good track for him. He's a good fantasy option, and he's good also as far as if you want to throw a few bucks at 50-1. Ryan Preece, nothing really to see here other than his 9th place finish earlier this year was the best finish he's ever had at Atlanta when he also started 26th. But again, I think you got better options. He is 40-1. Bubba Wallace, now he's 20-1. We know the story. We've said it before. We talked about it earlier this week. Fact is, the dude choked. And he's choked before in these spots on super speedways. As you know, in these types of tracks, you have to have quick reaction, quick decisions. And he's making bad, quick decisions late in races, and it's costing him wins. But he did have the 46 laps that he led earlier this year, and that's good. And so overall, he's not a bad option for, 20-1. That's pretty decent for a driver who should have won in February. He has 3 top 10s in his last 5 races at the track. But once again, those are all in February. His last 3 July finishes are 22nd, 29th, and 25th. Ty Gibbs, I don't really see a whole lot here for Ty Gibbs to be behind him. He's only started in the top 15 once in Atlanta and doesn't have a whole lot more to show for it when it comes to overall results at this track. So I don't really think it's a great week to jump on Ty Gibbs. I think you can go elsewhere. And, he's had a couple of moments, but nothing major. And then you have Zane Smith wraps it up 50-1, my long shot pick from Tuesday. Am I happy about 34th? No. But look, I'm okay with it because it's Atlanta. Not worried about the position. I am a little bit concerned with the fact that, because if you look at it, in his last 3 races at Atlanta, he's finished 7th, 7th, and 11th. But his 3 starts in those races were 6th, 8th, and 7th, starting way back here. That's the thing that concerns me. But I'm getting 50 to 1 and a driver that has done really well here over his last 3 races. So that's the reason why I'm just going to stick with him and go that way. But I'll see if there are some other long shots that I am going to prefer to go with before we wrap it up. So here is the fantasy team. I have 2 of them. Before we go through it, let me do that. Let me take a look and see if there are, which would be considered the best long shots. I think Suarez is a great long shot, 35 to 1, tremendous. I'd be all over that. I'd be all over Bowman at 28 to 1. Absolutely. Those 2, Jones, 50 to 1. I'd go with him. That's 3 good long shots. Stenhouse, definitely 50 to 1. I'd go with him. That's a 4th one. And then would be Zane Smith. So those would be the 5 really good long shots that I would go with. The top one, if I had a pick, would be Suarez. 35 to 1. I think that's a gift. Okay. Here are the fantasy teams I've put together. Again, I got 2 teams, and let's go through it. So as you can see here, as far as bargains, where it would start would be right. We have to go up here, actually, unfortunately. I mean, look, you could look at Dylan at 6,200 since he is starting 4th, but it probably means you're not going to get positions. You're probably going to be negative there, and he's going to have to lead laps. I'd still be concerned with it, but hey, he's 6,200, so it's an option. Eric Jones, love him compared to Dylan. It's the same price basically, and you know what I feel about him. So that's a really good one. Hill is just, what are we going to do with this guy? He just 5 O'Reilly wins at Atlanta. I don't know, the guy just keeps producing in the O'Reilly series, but what about Cup? Why doesn't he perform in the Cup yet? Well, it's different. We know that. And we've talked about the differences many times, and it just is what it is. That's why you can't always look at these situations where a driver is good at that track in the O'Reilly series and think it's going to translate in the Cup series. We use it as a tool, but it's a small tool. It's a small percentage. It's just something to keep an eye on. Hey, they've had success at the track. It's a track they're familiar with in a positive way, but can't do much more than that. The good thing, though, is when the driver does start to feel it, well, then you really boost up the fact that they've had wins or, really good results in the O'Reilly series. And that makes a much bigger difference. But until Hill has success in the Cup Series at these tracks, it ain't going to matter. The good news is he's starting 30th and he's pretty cheap. SVG, 12th position, so you don't have a lot to gain there. But he's cheap at 6,900. It's not bad. Bowman, another really good option for fantasy, 7,300. You know what we think about him. Stenhouse, 7,700. Even Wallace is 7,900, who should have won the race earlier this year. Vincent Chastain, excellent fantasy option. Much better option than Chris Buescher. I mean, they don't even compare at this track. So Chastain and some of these other drivers I even talked about getting much better value than to consider Chris Buescher. And then we start getting to the more expensive drivers. Okay, so here is the first team. All right, so this is the one where I have Bell, Cindric, and Zane Smith, my top 3 picks. And again, considering Zane is 34th, I still feel I'm in good position to gain positions and try to win a race, because that's the other thing. This is one of those races where some of these drivers who are on the border and know they need to win, this is one, or hey, I realistically am not going to be able to make the playoffs unless I win twice. and I'm going to have to put a string of top 10s together. Well, this is basically the opportunity for some of these drivers where if you don't win this week, then forget it. I think Zane Smith is definitely in that category. Okay, so this is what we have for that is our first team. Let me see if I can get my second team in here. Okay. This is the second team. All right. So I'm sticking with Bell and I'm sticking with Suarez. Okay. Then I'm going with the Blaney Logano team because they should lead laps starting at the front. I should be able to gobble up laps from Blaney and Logano, and we know the rest, starting the two of them. So I'm able to get Blaney, Bell, and Logano on my driver team here. And that's because I feel real good about the three options here. Mentioned Suarez, Bowman is the other one we've added, and Eric Jones. Okay, so I'm going with these three long shots here with these three top drivers here. And I still had a couple hundred left over. And that's how it goes. So look, hope you've enjoyed the coverage. Hope you enjoyed the race that was going on while I was doing this. And we just had an opportunity to go on earlier, and I decided I'm going to take advantage of it. And so hopefully we'll be able to come on a little bit earlier every week. But matter of fact, I think the schedule now might be where we're going to get some off weeks with the O'Reilly. And so that could make things easier for us to come on earlier once qualifying is over on Saturdays. Don't forget, of course, you've got the night race tomorrow night. So we do have to deal with that. What is it going to be? 3 straight night races on Sunday nights, even though there's no holiday on Monday. It is what it is, but just remember that there will be a race that will not conclude until pretty late on Sunday. So if you have to get up to work early on Monday, you might want to DVR it, or actually you don't even have to DVR things anymore, depending on your form of streaming like I have at YouTube. So, okay. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, anything at all, let me know. Let me know what you like, what you don't like regarding the teams. If you have some picks, things of that nature. Remember to tune in on Tuesday. Once again, CJ and I will get you ready for the next race. And we have still a good number of races to go, handful of races to go before we get to Daytona and then decide which are the playoff drivers. So we're getting close. The closer we get, another couple of weeks, then things are going to really start getting tense with the playoff drive. So we'll be here every step of the way. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck tomorrow.